All right, we're back. It is the free-for-all, what do we call it, free-for-all after party podcast. Mike Doocy with Sam Gannon. We do free-for-all on TV on Fox 4 every night at 10:30, except Sundays at 10. And we are talking mostly Cowboys here, as even the great Troy Aikman admits it's almost a must-win-ish type game, considering it's only the fourth game of the season as they play the Giants Thursday.
Who would have thought we'd be talking about McCarthy on the hot seat, as if he continues to be on it simply because of the way they've underperformed in the playoffs. But to have this train a little bit derailed off the tracks this early in the year is a little bit concerning. And for the first time in a long time since I've been here, I don't know that this is my 6th year here. I don't know that I've seen so many guys express their frustration to reporters after that Baltimore game on Sunday.
Yeah, the body language was bad during the game, obviously, and we're going to hear from CD and Micah here in a moment. But those guys were the ones who grabbed most of the headlines for kind of the way they acted on the sideline during the game. Micah, very animated with teammates. CD just showing his frustration. I've been here a long time, obviously, and there have been. I remember Aikman, speaking of Troy, screaming at an assistant coach one time about how, the Switzer regime just wasn't working and nobody was taking responsibility. The Micah stuff reminds me a little bit of that. But that is a bad sign. You mentioned McCarthy. Should we get that out of the way?
Let's just do it. Yeah, this is where Mike and I just stand on two different ends of the spectrum on this.
And I don't have any reason to defend Mike McCarthy. I just think it's unusual that a guy who has won 36 games in 3 years is just automatically on the hot seat. And this isn't the first time, as you said, that he's been there. I mean, we had David Moore on the other night, and I pointed out that Vegas has McCarthy at the top of the list of coaches most likely to get fired first, and David pointed out he was there last year too. And so, but I will say this, Sam, if they lose to the Giants, it's a huge game for McCarthy, because I think if they beat the Giants, at least McCarthy lasts through the bye. But I think if they lose to the Giants and then lose at Pittsburgh and then lose at home to Detroit, and they're 1-5 going into the bye, I think Jerry would do something that he hates to do, and he's only done once before, and that is fire a coach midway through the season. Their inactivity in the offseason is killing them right now. From guys they let get away to not reinforcing the run defense, which has just been terrible. It wasn't good last year either, to allowing a situation to exist where CeeDee Lamb was not in training camp. He and Dak, for all their talk, have not clicked yet here early in the season, to letting Pollard get away and not really replacing him, to think Ezekiel Elliott can come in here and be a factor, where clearly even McCarthy realizes now that he can't, and on and on and on. It's, Jerry, I don't know. I get so tired of talking about Jerry and what he says and what he might mean, but I think his stubbornness is getting the best of him this off season. It did, and I think his team is paying the price.
Yeah, and it's so interesting with Jerry because, from our standpoint, as we've talked about, it's great for us because every game, win or lose, Jerry is talking in front of sometimes 30-plus reporters, media members after every single game, which isn't a normal thing around the league. People that are diehard NFL fans know that Jerry is maybe the only GM that does this and holds court with media members. But the bottom line is, I think it's easy to point the blame at Jerry, but to me right now, this is on the players and the coaches. To me, it's on the coaches for not having these guys ready to go during a practice week, because McCarthy and Dak both came out after the game Sunday and said, we didn't have a good week of practice. And I'm still... What do you mean you didn't have a good week of practice coming off that embarrassment against the Saints? How do you not practice well the following week?
And I don't want guys to lie to us, but why would you ever admit that publicly?
Well, then that's my other point. That's where when I had George Teague on, the former Cowboys safety, and he was talking. I was asking him about, do you think this is a mentally tough team? And he said that's hard to answer right now. But what I will say is some of these conversations amongst players, keep that in house. There's clearly frustration brewing, and if they lose on Thursday, it's surely going to boil over. But you don't need to kind of tell us everything. Keep some of that within the team.
What I tend to tell people when it comes to Jerry is he's not as involved as he was 10, 15 years ago. He still loves the thought of being general manager. He loves being the guy who ultimately makes decisions, and obviously he still does that. More than anything, he loves being the guy who talks about everything. I think that's what kills Jerry in the public eye. As you said, we love it because of what we do for a living, but if he would just keep his mouth shut for a season, I think it's amazing how the perception of Jerry would change. But in terms of decisions that he makes, I do think, as he said on the radio during the week, that he takes a lot of input from people. Will McClay, Steven, and I'm sure McCarthy to a certain extent. And in fairness to this team, their player personnel department has done a pretty good job over the last decade or so. They've drafted well. They've had rosters that are considered to be among the best in the league from year to year, but they let it get away from them this year, that's for sure, in terms of bolstering that roster. Back to McCarthy real quick. Belichick's name, of course, is coming up now. And
did last year.
I can't help but be reminded of when Bill Parcells was hired here. And a lot of the same discussions were taking place, that they need somebody with that type of pedigree, that type of reputation to come in here, although it's a little different because Parcells replaced Dave Campo, was a lifelong assistant, great guy, just didn't do well as head coach. McCarthy's won a Super Bowl. He's top 20 all-time in wins in the NFL. But Belichick obviously is probably the greatest coach in the history, head coach in the history of the NFL. I guess he would want to come here because the roster on paper is so good, and he'll think he can fix that defense especially. But, man, to watch him put up with the circus, that'd be worth the price of admission right there.
But, we were, before we went on air with David Moore, I think you were doing the sports tease, which we have a tease right before our show. So Mike was doing that. And I was
to tease our viewers.
Yeah, and I was talking to David, and I was asking about the Belichick Jerry dynamic, and he thinks that Jerry would take a step back on some stuff in order to get Bill in here, meaning that those media scrums that we're seeing every week with Jerry, maybe those don't happen anymore if Bill comes here, and that's what David was thinking. He's like, that's the one pair that I think would work.
And a lot of these same discussions, I promise you, were happening when Bill Parcells was hired here. And you know how many playoff games he won here in 4 years? 0. And
isn't that a risk you take?
The roster is better now than it was when Parcells took over. I'll grant you that. And Parcells found Tony Romo. Parcells developed a lot of talent here. I'm not a fan of Parcells, but I'll admit that. Again, for what we do for a living, I hope the Belichick thing happens. The storylines will just be endless. I can't help but feel, I don't know if sorry for Mike McCarthy's the right word, because he's had his opportunity to succeed in the playoffs and hasn't done it. But now to think if you could win 12 games in 3 straight seasons and then get fired during the regular season, that seems to be unfair, but nobody ever said that coaching was fair, that's for sure. So, again, Thursday is huge for everybody, but maybe especially Mike McCarthy. Let's talk about the player dynamics and some of the stuff that we had referenced earlier, the sideline antics, the body language. Want to play that soundbite from CD and Micah and then react to that? Okay. Here's what each of those guys said on Wednesday. First, CD Lamb taking responsibility.
As for me and my performance, I expect a lot out of myself, more than anyone could put on me. And quite honestly, I failed myself, and obviously I failed the team just as far as producing and being that game-breaker player for the team and obviously the guy that they can lean on. And, I kind of let the game get to my head a little bit. But in the same sense, I knew what I can do. I knew what I bring to the table, and I know what I can do on that field. So with that being said, going forward, there shall be different. Once again, can't blame nobody. You got to start with the man in the mirror, and I'm a huge believer in that. And watching that game kind of pissed me off, but hey, I did that. You know what I'm saying? I can't get mad at nobody else. So with that being said, I've learned.
Do you think everybody's gotten the message that's been emanating around here about being professional, following your game plan or assignment?
I mean, everyone says it, but then again, we got to see what happens on Sunday. Or Thursday.
How do you think some of your messaging is being received by some of your teammates?
Well, it's very hard to tell, right? Because everyone's nodding their head like, yeah, we all agree. But at the same time, like, it's not equal when it's out there on the field. Too prideful to I feel like as a competitor, like, at some point you got to be prideful enough to say, hey, like, I'm not going to allow this to happen to me. Like, I just feel like some people are just allowing them to keep getting smacked in the face. Like, when are you going to stand up?
So these are two of the maybe the two best players on this team, two of the three, that's for sure. And they take entirely different approaches to defending or not defending their behavior, their play over the recent games, especially against Baltimore in that loss. CeeDee Lamb, I don't know if he was counseled to say this. I don't know if he came up with it on his own, but just kind of fell on the sword and said, look, I need to be better, need to do better, I will do better. And Micah continued to say what he's been saying, and that is, look, not sure everybody's understanding this thing. Not sure everybody's buying in. Pointing fingers. Let's be honest about it. That's what he's doing.
It was a different type of tone that I heard him. He still seemed just as ticked off, on Wednesday than he was on Sunday. He reiterates the fact that almost other guys are to blame. He didn't say that, but that's what it feels like. And for CeeDee, I'm glad he got out in front of reporters and said that, because diffuses the situation. We all saw it. We saw your reaction on the sideline with Dak. We saw it all. And to me, that's growth on CeeDee Lamb's part, because like we had David Morin talking about leadership. Some guys are born leaders, some are not. Is Dak a leader in that locker room? Absolutely. Are CeeDee and Micah leaders? Up for debate. I think you could say maybe at times. But when things are going badly, that's when you lean on leadership more than ever before. So, CeeDee said what he had to say. For anyone who's questioning CeeDee and Dak's relationship, he's like, that guy's like a brother to me. We're in this together. Micah is Micah, and we know he likes to talk. So it's going to be interesting to see what this defense looks like. I mean, the offense needs work, but let's be honest, the defense has been particularly bad through 2 weeks now.
Yeah, really almost historically bad against the run. I mean, they rank literally at the bottom in virtually every category when it comes to stopping the run. That's for sure. And now they go up against the Giants team, which their defense can put pressure on the quarterback, so it's going to be a challenge for the Dallas offensive line too. But if the Cowboys go into this game and struggle to stop the Giants' running game, then I don't. You have to say that this defense is one of the worst.
There's
in
no
the
more
NFL.
hope.
No, I mean it's kind of that.
It's
point,
hopeless.
Right?
No, I agree. And historically, the Cowboys have played really well against the Giants. Mm-hmm. Dak Prescott in particular, his last 12 starts against them, he's won. So if you don't go into the Meadowlands on Thursday night and make a statement, to me, you also just can't win this game. To me, it has to be a definitive win. To me, if you get by and just squeak by with a win, but you didn't really play that well, I think that's just as concerning. I know wins are hard to come by and it's week to week, but you better go in there and make a statement on both sides of the ball.
I disagree in that regard. I think they're where they are right now you take any win, especially on the road. I understand what you're saying. I do. And if it's just horribly sloppy and there's still all sorts of reason for concern, maybe you have a point. But I think if they win a hard-fought division game,
yeah, if
on
it's
the
hard
road,
fought
they
and
take
it's
it right
clean.
now.
I'm just
Yeah.
talking about. I guess a win is a win. I just think for this team, they need more than just getting by. I think they need to have some type of a dominant performance on both, because what's coming the next 2 weeks
Right.
after that. You can talk about momentum. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, but mentally, in terms of your psyche, in terms of that locker room right now, if players aren't as together as they should be, then I don't know.
Speaking of momentum, they did rally. The rally fell short. They tried to rally, you could say valiantly, against Baltimore. You and I talked about it Sunday night. We talked a lot more about the poor play than we did the decent play late. To me, the attempt to rally only matters if it does carry over into this game, because we've seen this from this team a lot in the past. And defenses play differently when they have a big lead. They just do. So it can be fool's gold in terms of the big numbers that an offense, a quarterback can put up in those types of situations. But who knows? Maybe it does carry over a little bit. I think this young offensive line will have another challenge. I think the Giants had 8 sacks against Cleveland. They really got to the quarterback. This O-line obviously has struggled. I think Dak's been sacked 9 times in 3 games. They obviously haven't been able to run the ball, and that, who knows how much of that is the running back by committee thing and the fact that none of their runners are any good right now. But some of it has to do with the O-line not doing its job too. So, we knew coming in, everybody talked about the 2 guys, Beebe and Guyton, brand new up front. And maybe the fact that you have 2 rookies up there is really causing problems here early.
It's not like they're horrible, right? But they, are up against a lot of veterans. They're young. This is their first year in the league. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to make those rookie mistakes. And right now, they need to be on it. And in terms of the run game, Dak Prescott, he had 51 pass attempts in that loss. He can't be throwing the ball that much. There's no balance in the offense, and that's something that's missing with this team through 3 weeks, frankly. They need to get in the end zone. They're not scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, Dak's way under 500 career when he has to throw that many times.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It's kind of an indication that they're desperate, is basically what that means. And McCarthy, I think, is a way of kind of defending his play calling, has said a lot that, we're putting drives together, we're just not getting to the end zone. But it is fair. It is fair to say that. It's funny because the Giants lost a game where they didn't allow a touchdown. Washington kicked 6 field goals and beat them.
That's a bright
so maybe
spot.
it's
The
possible
kicker on this team, Brandon Aubrey.
So maybe that's how the Cowboys break the losing streak. No, Aubrey's amazing.
He's a beast.
I go into every game hoping that he gets a chance to break the record. He kicked one that was 1 yard short of the NFL record.
He's just
against Baltimore.
Thank goodness this team has him. But now Aubrey needs a little help.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, prediction time. Cowboys 1-2. We've talked about the tough schedule coming up. This was considered a gimme. They've cruised against the Giants and Washington over recent years. Will they do so Thursday night, Sam Gannon?
I'm going to say yes. I don't know how confident. I'm not completely confident in it, but I think they're going to get their act together a little bit, just because I don't think the Giants are as good of a football team as the Cowboys are overall. I have them winning 30-20. Now, if it ends up downpouring on Thursday night, that will change things, and it will probably impact the score. But for now, that's where I am. I'm at Cowboys 30, Giants 20.
Yeah, I've got 24-20 Dallas. Again, I'm not convinced that this defense can stop anybody right now. So maybe that's, from a Cowboys standpoint, optimistic to think that they can even hold this team to 20. And as I said, a test for this O-line. A couple of personal things. I'm not going to announce it right now, but in a future podcast, when other members of my family give me the okay, I will announce something that really cool that's happened in our family. And You've been working out like a fiend. Every time I look on social media, you've done the Stairmaster for like an hour.
Well, I did the treadmill today. That's what, if you looked at it, I was the treadmill today.
I was going to say, God, if she did the Stairmaster for an hour, she won't be able to walk.
No, and people who've seen this, and I talk to you about this all the time. Now we're talking about more life things, folks, not just sports.
Life.
My thing with working out, my relationship with food and all of these things, it's up and down. Sometimes I'm really good for a period of maybe 5-6 months, and then I'll fall off again. And that's what has happened to me in these last 2 years. So finally, I'm in the mental place, because I do think when you decide to change up what you're eating, you decide to change up your workout regimen, you have to mentally prepare yourself first to do that. Like for me, it's almost convincing myself mentally, because I know physically I'll be able to get it back eventually. But the get back right now, this first month of this, is probably the hardest for me, because I can't think about it too much. If I have too much time to think about whether or not I'm going to go work out, I'll talk myself out of it. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that. But I will say that every time I've worked out in this last month, and I'm going to get back into swimming, mentally I feel so much better. I do. I feel like, okay, I accomplished something today.
Well, and for people who don't know, Sam was a Division I swimmer in college, so that's obviously maybe the best form of exercise once you can do that as well as she can. And
not quite the same swimmer, but
it's tough where we work to make good eating decisions too. And I'm an incessant snacker. That's my weakness. If it just came down to the meals that I ate, I'd be 30 pounds lighter than I am. But it's all the snacking and the sweets and that kind of stuff. And we have a wonderful new little cafe that was opened here about 6 months ago. That's great. But it's right near the sports office.
us. And when I say it's like we have two temptation islands at work. We have the weather center that has all kinds of treats and everything. And so we work late. We work from 3 to 11 essentially. Yeah. Like that's our night shift. So it's not a normal 9 to 5. So those are the things that I'm working through again. Yay. I've had to restart this process like a million times.
Good job. We'll keep after it. And again, I'll have a fun little announcement to make probably on the next pod about something neat that's happened in our life as well. So thanks for joining us. Free for all every night, 10:30, and Sunday nights at 10. We'll see what these Cowboys and Giants do on Thursday. Thanks, everybody.